tonight we're going to be talking about some of our favorite breakout candidates for 2020. Basically, these are any player who has not had a top 12 season as a quarterback, running back, or tight end, or because wide receiver is a little bit deeper, a top 24 as a wide receiver. So we all put together our top 5, and we'll kind of go through this list. We'll start at 5, and we'll work our way up to our number 1 guy here. And so for me, or actually, Katie, you're the guest. Why don't you go ahead and start us off and tell us who your number 5 is?
All right. Well, my number 5 would be Noah Fant. I've been seeing a lot of stuff that he's been working with Drew Lock in the offseason, building up that chemistry. I know there's a lot of, targets for Lock to go to now with a couple of, good draft picks and whatnot. But, I think we kind of saw flashes of what Fant will be able to do. And there were actually, I looked it up last year, there were only 4 games where he had more than 4 targets over the whole season. So I think if he can just get that target share up a little bit, then we'll definitely be able to see him get some more yardage and get into the end zone more than he did last year. So that's definitely one player that I'm keeping my eye on. And the nice thing is I feel like his ADP in a lot of drafts is he's relatively cheap in my eyes compared to some of the other tight ends. So I tend to be a person that kind of waits on tight end. And so that's one of the people that I'm targeting kind of later in the draft.
Yeah, I don't think he's in like that crowded of a situation. Obviously Sutton and then Jerry Jeudy, who they just drafted, but yeah. That's pretty similar to most teams. You look at last year with like the Falcons, for example, and right. With Austin Hooper and what he was able to do with Julio and Calvin Ridley still there. So yeah. I don't think it's crazy. I love Noah Fant. The dude is absolutely an absolute beast athletically. Tess is one of the best, athletic tight ends in the league. And so, last year he well outplayed his expectation as a rookie. We know it takes rookie tight ends it takes tight ends 3 or 4 years to really catch on. Some may not even tell their second team till they really start to progress. So I really like that call. And I think that he is somebody, because I think he's going in what, like the 10th, 11th round, 12th round, something like that. Usually as the 12th, 13th, 14th tight end. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Got great value, especially with some of the big name tight ends that go super early. I personally choose to kind of wait until the later rounds when he and a couple of other guys are still there. So
yeah, I love that call. I also have a tight end I'm going to throw in here as well, and it's kind of weird it seems like tight end maybe isn't going to be that awful this year. It feels really weird to say, but there's a lot of really nice options. I'm going to throw out Chris Herndon. We thought that breakout was coming last year. Then he started the year off with what I think was like a 4-game suspension. Then I think he only played was like 20 snaps or something. But whenever he got back, then he got hurt. Obviously, the Jets added Denzel Mims this season, but outside of that, it's Crowder, I guess, Lev Bell, depending on how he will or will not be used in the Adam Gase offense. And we saw it down the stretch during Herndon's rookie season. I think there were, out of the last 6 weeks, I think all but 2 of his games he had at least 4 targets, which doesn't sound like a lot, I realize it, but at the tight end position, if you're getting at least 4 targets every week, as a rookie I think that was Darnold's rookie year as well. So hopefully that chemistry can continue to grow. And I think this will be the year that we see Herndon pop as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the loss of Robbie Anderson will free up quite a few looks for Herndon too.
Yeah, I remember last year, literally every week, once he was coming back, we're like, waiver wire pickup this week. Pick up Chris Herndon. He's going to break out. And every week we just kept waiting. We kept pushing the goalpost back, pushing it back until he got hurt and was out for the year. But yeah, I love Chris Herndon. We saw what he did his rookie. Again, another guy in his rookie year that really popped that people weren't really expecting him. He was much more not on people's radars. So I remember playing him a lot in DFS and really looking at his routes run and everything. And he was running a lot of routes and super efficient. So I do like him. They did bring back Ryan Griffin, but I think that offense takes a step forward this year, or I hope it does. You never know with Adam Gase and what to expect from him. So I like that call as well as another one of those late round tight ends. And again, I guess I'll just keep it going. And my 5 is actually Jonnu Smith, who As a whole, like I'm not super high on this entire offense. I think a lot of people are. I know people are really super high on Derrick Henry. I am not. I have him as like a borderline RB. As a borderline RB1. I have him as running back RB9 right now in my rankings. AJ Brown, I think, is going a little bit too high than for my liking. However, I think the value here is Jonnu Smith because they really don't have a number 2 target. I mean, I guess you could make a case for Corey Davis, but Corey Davis hasn't broken out yet. I know some people are still baiting that drum for Corey Davis, and maybe he does it again this year, or maybe he actually does it this year. I'm not sold, but Jonnu Smith, I think, steps into a really nice situation here. If you look at him last year, he really started coming on down the stretch. The 3 of the last 4 weeks, he scored double-digit fantasy points, which for a tight end, we will take that all day. He ran a lot of routes, and that's exactly what you're looking for. I mean, he played at least 78% of the snaps every single game. You have to go way back to week 6. So it took him a while to get going, but once Ryan Tannehill and that offense start going, and I personally don't think that they're going to be able to run the ball as much as they did last year. I think they caught lightning in the bottle. And so if they have to open the offense up and throw the ball more, I think that spells good things for Jonnu Smith. I think he's somebody that's going to see a lot of red zone targets. So super athletic tight end, and he's still young. He's only 24 years old. But he has upper percentile speed. His speed score is 83rd percentile. His burst score is 94th percentile. Everything you want to see. Upper echelon catch radius as well. So I love Jonnu Smith, and he's another guy that you can kind of get in that 14 to 18 range among tight ends as that late round tight end. And I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes a top 5 tight end, to be honest with you.
You're just gonna nonchalantly drop that fire in there at the end and try and move on. Top 5 at tight end.
Yeah, I do.
The top 5 tight end. Hey, Katie, who's next for you?
Yeah, that's a pretty fiery take there, Kev.
I don't think that is, because for me it's like you have the 3 tight ends, right? You have the big 3 and Mark Andrews. I don't really consider, or you could maybe consider his top 4 with Zach Ertz, but I think with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert and some of the other things they have, I do think that's going to hurt Zach Ertz. So for me, it's Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, and George Kittle. And then past that, it could be fucking. I mean, you really could take fucking anything if you want. Throw them all in a bag, mix it up, and pull one out. And it wouldn't surprise me who that guy is that finishes after that, right? Because the tight end position is so volatile. But I think that for Jonnu Smith, I wouldn't be surprised if he sees somewhere in a 20 to 25% target share range. If they have to if they have to throw the ball more, which I do expect. Their defense, they lost a lot of pieces along that defense. They did make some upgrades, but still, like, I think that this is going to be a different year for this team. And I do not think that's going to be able to do the things they're able to do and really try to run the ball like they like to. So for me, no, I don't think it's crazy to say that he has the potential to be a top 5 tight end.
All right, planting the flag there.
Yep, Team Jonnu.
So maybe we could make like a friendly wager on that, because my next guy on the list is also a tight end, which I agree with you, Cody. I think maybe we're kidding ourselves, but I think maybe this year won't be as horrible, hopefully, with the tight end position. But I would be willing to say that if both guys end up playing a full season, that Will Dissly will be higher than Jonnu Smith. If they both, stay healthy for the full season. That's my opinion. I mean, when Dissly was healthy, his first 4 games his rookie year, he scored two touchdowns in just 4 games his rookie year. And then, we were all excited for him to come back last year. He got to play 6 games this time before he tore his Achilles. And in those 6 games, he upped his touchdowns to 4 touchdowns just in those 6 games. So, Wilson has a great connection with him. I know that tight end room is a little bit crowded right now, but I think Dissly is Wilson's guy. I'm not super worried about Greg Olsen at all. Can that dude even run anymore? Like, come on, man. You got to hang it up at some point, dude. But I think Dissly has a chance to really have a full-on breakout season if he can stay healthy.
I don't hate that. For me, I mean, if we want to play this, we could play. You take Dissly and I'll take Jonnu Smith. I feel pretty confident in that. I don't hate Will Dissly. I remember the game. I believe he had against the Cardinals last year in DFS. I remember that game well, because you targeted tight ends against. I guess the Cardinals last year. It was you printed money that way. So, and I know he had a really big game that week.
Yeah.
But that would be my concern. And I guess the other concern would be the fact that they don't throw the ball that much, which is no different than Johnny Smith, right? But they do have Tyler Lockett as well as DK Metcalf, who might also be on somebody's list here as well. The man-child that is DK Metcalf.
DK.
I thought maybe you were referring to me as man-child. At number 4, I'm going to go with David Montgomery. I'm not jumping off the wagon. If you look at how bad that offense was last year, if it even improves slightly, I think that can have a drastic change in what Montgomery does. Whenever we're looking at these kind of things, what we need to do is we need to chase volume, right? With Monty last year, he had 267 touches. If that passing, like I said, if that passing game can improve even slightly, that's going to help him out. He was 13th in evaded tackles, 17th in yards created last year. And according to Football Outsiders, the Bears were 29th in adjusted line yards. So if that situation improves even slightly and he can stay around that same area with touches, and you want to talk about someone cheap and chasing volume, I think David Montgomery is a perfect RB2 target, or even a semi kind of adjusted 0 RB target to be able to get those kind of touches at such a cheap price.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I think volume is absolutely king, and he is somebody that is certainly people are soured upon, at least right now, going in like that 4th, 5th round range. I mean, you could get as your RB3, possibly even RB4, depending on how you shake your draft shakes out and stuff like that. So I don't hate David Montgomery. I think this offense, like we've talked about before, I think this offense gets better. We talked about this last week with the second year guys, and I do think this offense takes a step forward this year with Allen Robinson. And I think somebody else has a Bear on their list as well, but in the passing game. So we will talk about that in a second. But for me, my number 4 is Daniel Jones. So let's break open the quarterback room here. I like Daniel Jones a lot. For me, it was between him and Baker Mayfield as who I was going to go with. I thought Baker Mayfield was a little bit too obvious, so I decided to go with Daniel Jones here. And he certainly had his struggles last year, but overall, like if you really look at it though, like you know how many games he played with a full allotment of weapons with Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, and Darius Slayton. Do you know how many? And Saquon? 0. Because they were all hurt for most of the year last year. So I think once you get all those guys back, they were 7th in passing plays per game. And I don't think that defense is getting any better. So that's one thing that we definitely look for is volume. He also can use his legs, not as much as some of these other guys. He's not like a Josh Allen or anything like that. However, he can get pick up some points on the ground. He finished 16th and with fantasy points per game with 16.2. But like I mentioned, I feel like with having all of his target or having all of his weapons back will really go a long way. He certainly had his ups and downs last year. He was very boom or bust. He scored 32 fantasy points week 3. And then, 12, 10, 5, 10, then 28, 11, 28, 14, 8, 35, and 14. So he has that in his bag of tricks here. And so he's somebody that I do like. And I think that if you're waiting on tight end, or waiting on quarterback, that I have no problem with taking.
Kind of feels like he's getting a little bit of hype and he's getting pushed up though. For me, he seems to be someone who's going a little too early.
Yeah, definitely agree.
I mean, it just depends. I think he's probably going somewhere around for most people. I think I have him as right outside of a QB1 in my rankings, and I go back and forth between him and Baker Mayfield because I think both of them have the possibility of breaking out, and I think people are less on Baker Mayfield. So yeah, I don't know. I just think everything is here for Daniel Jones to break out with having all the weapons like I mentioned, and then not to mention the fact that I think their defense is still going to be atrocious, and so they're going to have to throw the ball a ton to be able to stay in the game. And so with those things considered and his ability to be able to get outside the pocket, I think he's more Alex Smith where he's a functional runner. He's not somebody that looks to run, but I think he has that ability to be able to get outside of the pocket and make plays on it with his legs. So with all those things considered, like I said, I also like this entire offense outside of Saquon is you can get a lot of value there because Darius Slayton, I think, is the first wide receiver coming off the board for them. It's like wide receiver 40. And I think that's atrocious. Sterling Shepard, if he can stay healthy and not with the concussions, I think he is somebody that, people should be looking at later in drafts as well. So this entire offense, I really like. I think could take a step forward this year.
Agreed.
So, all right. So let's move on to the number 3 spot. Katie, who you got here?
And if I remember right, Kevin, you used to be a truther on this with me, but I got Darius Geis finally breaking out. When I first was writing for the Fantasy Authority, it was like right when he was coming in as a rookie, and I was so excited to see him do his thing. And then, as we all know, he tore his ACL in preseason. It was awful. And then he got to come back from that last year. He then sprained his MCL. So we've yet to see him kind of at his top performance. But even in the 5 games that he got to play last year, his yards per carry was pretty high. He scored a couple touchdowns. We saw his kind of upside in the game against Carolina. He had 10 carries for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, I'll take that all day at the price that he's at. And I liked his game and stuff, so I started kind of following him on socials and stuff, and seems like a pretty cool dude. So I just kind of hope, there's those kind of guys that you always just root for and you want to see do well. And so he's one that I haven't been able to let go of yet. I have to say, though, if it doesn't happen this season, I'll probably have to step off the train. But
well, I do think that, so he's another guy that you probably could consider a value because he's going for most people like RB 30, 31, 32. And while I do think it is a crowded backfield with Adrian Peterson and the draft to Antonio Gibson, but Antonio Gibson right now, I mean, I don't think we can peg him into any sort of a role because we don't know how he's going to be utilized or deployed in that backfield. And I think this is a positive because Darius Geis is going to be finally heading into the year healthy, which is the first time he's done it since his rookie year. But the MCL is not something that really worries me all that much. I know he got hurt and everything last year, but that's not something that really worries me. It's usually a pretty quick recovery and turnaround time. So getting this entire offseason to work and get himself in shape, like I think people are going to forget that Darius Geis was, a really highly sought after prospect coming out, especially in dynasty circles. Whenever he was coming out, there was a lot of people debating him being the RB1 in that class. And so I think there is something there with Darius Geis. He was somebody earlier in the year that like I was definitely much higher on, and I could see I don't think that's a bad thing because you're going to be able to get him at such a discount that even if he doesn't work out, so be it. But his upside, he certainly has RB1 upside in him if he can stay healthy and he gets the opportunities.
Right.
Yeah, it just all comes down to health with him. There's no doubting his talent. The situation. It seems crowded. Kev, you alluded to the my RB ranking video for the rookies. I have Antonio Gibson at 7, I believe. And if guys can't stay healthy, I think Gibson is a name we need to monitor. But at 3, I'm going to jump in. I have DK Metcalf. I was a little. Kev, whenever you were talking about the definitions and how we were going to determine the players we were going to bring up, and you said about the top 24 wide receiver, I immediately went, oh, shit, I think I messed that up. But I was safe. Last year in half PPR leagues, DK Metcalf was wide receiver 29. I was a little surprised to see that because it felt like he already had a breakout year, more or less. He had a really nice year last year. Only had 100 targets, but he put up 58,907. I might be a year early on this, but I feel like this is going to become DK is going to be the 1A instead of the 1B to lock it. Like I said, might be a year early, but the dude's an absolute monster. I didn't think I would be commending Seattle on the way that they utilized him last year. First half of the year basically is what he did at Ole Miss. Line up on the left side, run down the field. But then the second half of the year, we saw him start to be used more ways, both sides of the fields, different routes and everything like that. So I'm really excited for DK Metcalf this year, and I think I'm going to put him as a wide receiver 1 for 2020.
Oh, so you're going to talk? You're just going to leave it like that? You're going to sit here and just drop that fire? Do you think he's going to be a wide receiver 1?
Yeah, he absolutely has wide receiver 1 upside at like the back end. I mean, last year, half PPR leagues, Mike Evans, 67, 1,100, and 8. I mean, all like DK wasn't that far off. Like I said, 58, 907. There's no reason why we couldn't see him jump up into that sort of range for this year. Man, we need to get Russell Wilson. I hope we get the squeaky wheel narrative. He's come out, he's said a little more up tempo, a little more passing. Why can we not have 1 year where Russ Wilson is just slinging it all over the field? Like we need that.
Let Russ cook. That's what we say. And I have the horribly painful experience of being a Seahawks fan, being a Washingtonian, and so everything is music to my ears. I would love for DK and Tyler to be that 1A, 1B team. I loved watching him last year. That was like one of my favorite things. My little 3-year-old, anytime we had the Seahawks on, would just chant DK, DK. So we're big DK fans, and I totally agree. I think he has huge upside. That dude is a man-child. He is inhuman. And yes, always let Russ cook.
Maybe one day they will just like release Russ and just let him just go wild, right? Like it. I don't know. Maybe
how has it not happened already?
Maybe when Pete Carroll finally either gets fired or retires, one or the other. There.
Yeah.
Because the way they run that team is beyond me. You would think they have like Alex Smith or Derek Carr back there at quarterback, and yet they have arguably a top 3, top 4 best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, I have like internal battles with Schottenheimer every Sunday. I'm like, dude, what are we doing? Why are you calling this? Why aren't you letting him throw the ball? Like, it's not like we don't have the weapon, in Tyler and DK, and then in some of the tight ends that we've talked about. Even though Disley was hurt last year, Hollister stepped up really nicely and kind of had a decent season in that kind of role. So, I mean, it's the perpetual question. Seahawks fans don't know why we can't just get like prime Russ to just be set free. We should start a petition or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and they've never really done much to really surround him with a lot of talent either. Or their offensive line, it's like they're like, hey, you know what? Like maybe they have some analytics or something that we don't know about that you don't actually need an offensive line for your quarterback to stay healthy. So like if there would have been anybody else, but that's not as athletic as he is, be able to get outside the pocket, like it would be a disaster because it's like they never care about their offensive line.
No.
It is maddening. So anyways, I don't know. That seems pretty hot. I mean, that is a fiery take as a wide receiver 1 for DK Metcalf. I love DK Metcalf. And I think there's good things to come when they finally got him a true alpha. But number 1, okay, we'll see what happens. Wide receiver 1, DK Metcalf. We're going to write that one down, and we're going to lock that one in as a take for Cody. I'm going to go on to my number 3. It's Anthony Miller. I feel like that we have been waiting for this to really come all together for Anthony Miller for the last couple of seasons. Last year, kind of took him a while to get going. The last 4 weeks of the season, though, he was wide receiver 11 over the last 4 weeks. I like Anthony Miller a lot. I'm really hoping that this offense does take a step forward here with Nick. It has to be Nick Foles. They traded for him. They're going to be paying him that ungodly contract. I don't know why they traded for him when they could have just signed, I don't know, Andy Dalton or Cam Newton or whomever. But I do think that this offense is going to take a step forward this year. Allen Robinson drawing coverage away from Anthony Miller. So I do think that Anthony Miller has a chance to cook. They really don't have a true wide receiver 3. Yes, they brought in Ted Ginn, but he is more of just that field stretcher. And then Darnell Mooney, which is one of my kind of late round guys that I love, but I don't think he really has much of an impact this year. And again, he's more of a field stretcher anyways. So I think things are all looking up for Anthony Miller, and I think he is kind of that late round flyer that I really like to take shots at because I think that he could end up taking another big step forward this year.
Yeah, I tend to just kind of try to avoid any Chicago Bear in general, but I see what you're saying. I do agree, and I do hope they take a step forward because, man, that was painful to watch last year.
Yeah, well, you don't like Allen Robinson? What do you mean?
Oh, I love A-Rob. It's just everybody else.
Yeah, I have Allen Robinson, I think, as wide receiver 9 or something like that. Love some Allen Robinson. He was such a value last year. He was going like what, the 6th, 7th round or something like that.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I think now we're getting into the good spot. So let's hear your number 2, Katie.
All right. So I did mess up the wide receiver. I went with top 12. I just read it wrong, but I had Terry McLaurin. You know, Haskins was not great last year, and rookie year, we know that kind of it takes some time for them to get adjusted. So I'm hoping that I've seen some stuff that they've been working out together. Hopefully they're building that chemistry. Hopefully Haskins can be a little more comfortable on the field this year. But McLaurin sat out 2 games last year, and he still almost eclipsed 1,000-yard season for a rookie and had 7 touchdowns. He had over 100 yards receiving in 3 games, and in all 3 of those games, he also had a touchdown. So again, if that's his upside, I'm all in. I think his dynasty price might be a touch high, depending on kind of who you're playing with. But in redraft, especially if you're playing with like more casual players who probably don't watch Washington, because you could definitely be a really good value for this year.
Oh, yeah. Get no argument from here. This is a Terry McLaurin friendly podcast here. Love some F1. But, I mean, and to be honest, they should already have the chemistry because they were teammates in college, right? So, yeah. I mean, they should already have that. But although he seemed to play better last year with Case Keenum in the lineup than Dwayne Haskins. But Dwayne Haskins did show some flashes. We'll see. Yeah. But they also have Alex Smith coming back. So, which is going to be an excellent story if he actually, gets to play in a game and starting a game. So, they said it's going to be a battle, so we'll see what happens. This is a new coaching staff, so I mean they don't really have anything tied to Dwayne Haskins, but I love Terry McLaurin. I think, like, honestly, for me, he's probably the best wide receiver of that class last year. And I know some people may argue that it could be AJ Brown or DK Metcalf, but for me, it's Terry McLaurin. I think that dude's an absolute beast, and he was somebody that a lot of people kind of looked over, and it wasn't on a lot of people's radars. And then he just came out and ate.
Yeah, Katie, you're fine. In half PPR scoring anyway, he was wide receiver 28, so you're good. It was the same way I felt about DK. Like, it felt like he had more of a wide receiver 2 season than that mid wide receiver 3. I actually did mess up because I had Tyler Boyd here, but he has been a wide receiver 2 in back-to-back years, so that doesn't work. So I'm going to pivot here. Christian Kirk, I'm going to roll with him. I think he was like wide receiver 40 last year, somewhere in that neck of the woods, and half PPR scoring. I think this is the year. I think the addition of DeAndre Hopkins helps. Does not really hurt Kirk. I think he was better suited as a wide receiver 2 versus a wide receiver 1 in the first place. And I think this will be the year that we start to see more of what we thought we were going to get with Cliff Kingsbury, where it's more vertical than horizontal. I think we're going to see more 4 wide receiver sets. They just literally couldn't do it last year. I mean, they're running out Damiere Byrd and whoever else, and that it just was not working. So this year, I think we see more of the vertical-based, heavier passes, like a heavier passing offense, more 4 wide receiver sets, and I think Christian Kirk is going to be a beneficiary of said offense.
Are you worried all about Larry Fitzgerald?
I think there's going to be enough to go around. Like, I don't think D-Hop gets his like 160, 170 anymore. I think he drops down a little bit. I think Fitz, he was around like 100 or so last year. I believe maybe like 90. I might be completely wrong on that. No, 109. So, I mean, he could stay around there. Christian Kirk had 108 last year. So if Kirk bumps up to that 120-ish range, I think it's going to be more than enough to go around in that offense.
I don't know if I see his target share going up that much, but I do think that his efficiency is going to rise with another year. And I also think having DeAndre Hopkins at alpha in the offense, where DBs are going to have to really focus on him, that's going to allow Christian Kirk to really get over the top and you kind of open up this entire offense. So I'm not as high on DeAndre Hopkins as a lot of other people are, and I actually have him as like wide receiver 9, I think, right now, wide receiver 10, something like that, somewhere in that range. I just think that he's going to suffer a drop off in targets, and I just think there's some other options here. I do know that, with a wide receiver, running a 4 wide receiver sets, I think that's going to, Cliff Kingsbury wants to spread the ball around. He's not somebody who's just going to sit here and that's what he wants in his offenses. So I do think that's probably. And then there's also another guy who's actually my number 2, and that is Kenyon Drake, right? I think Kenyon Drake is going to absolutely eat this year. I do not think it's crazy to say that I think that he certainly has RB1. I think he also has top 5, possibly top 3 upside here in this offense. We saw it last year once he took over, or once he was traded for in week 9. He has the backfield to himself. He's never finished higher than RB16. But he finishes RB4 over the final 7 games he played. He played at least 63% of the snaps in every game with the Cardinals, and he played at least 80% of the snaps in 5 of those 7 games. David Johnson is obviously gone. Chase Edmonds and Benjamin are going to be fighting for that backup role. So I think there's really lots of like here. He finished 13th in targets over that span of 7 games with the Cardinals, and he also he finished 7th in rushing yards, and he also scored 8 touchdowns in those 7 games. So there's a lot to like about Kenyon Drake, and I think he's going a little bit later than he should be. I have him currently at RB10, I believe. I could probably have him move him up even higher. I probably will as things progress, because there's just nothing there that really scares me with him. And I think he could end up really running probably at least 60% of the touches in that backfield, and somebody that's going to get a lot of targets as well. So I like Kenyon Drake quite a bit.
Okay, if you don't think that's a little flash in the pan, or some of his carries go away if they're going to be going to a more pass heavy offense at all.
No, because I think that what he loses there, he could make up in receptions as well, because he wasn't targeted a ton. I mean, he 30 targets over 7 games. I think there's some room to grow there for him, and he's certainly a more of the capable pass catcher. And I really think what it's going to do is, once you open up those passing lanes and you spread the defense out, it's going to open up those rushing lanes as well for him to be able to have some of those long gains. So, like I said, I mean, he's not somebody that's never had an RB1 season. He did finish as an RB2 last year, but a lot of that came on the back of what he did once he got to Arizona, because I mean, he largely did not do a ton with Miami. But I like Kenyon Drake a lot, and I think somebody that, I mean, you can get him in the 3rd round, or I mean, even in the late 2nd. Like, I love that.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a great season, and as much as it pains me as a Seahawks fan to say, I'm really intrigued and a little bit excited to see this Cardinals offense. I think that they might be kind of an under the radar kind of scary team, if they can, get the scheme right and get the personnel right and have it all kind of come together. I think it might be a scary one to go up against.
That whole division, to be honest with you, though, is going to be a lot of fun. I mean, you have the 49ers, the Rams. Well, I don't know about the Rams. The Rams, they may actually be the worst team in that division at this point. And then, which is crazy to say, but a team that's a couple years ago was in the Super Bowl. But I mean, the Cardinals are going to be a lot of fun. The 49ers are going to be probably just as good as they were last year. And then, the Seahawks are always good. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be a fun division to watch.
I'm not sure if we're always good, but we're always lucky. That's we got that on our side. Yeah,
but I mean, how many times have they not made the playoffs with Russ, though? I mean, very few, right?
Right. Yeah, but I mean, there's been some games where we somehow pull out a W, and I'm like, we should not.
That Russ magic. Yeah. I tell you, he threw a dagger into my heart a couple years ago with the Chiefs.
Yeah, man. All love to Russ Wilson, man. He's the best. But
yeah, could you imagine how bad the Seahawks would be, though, if they didn't have him?
Oh, unbearable. It would be awful.
Truly.
Yeah. All right. So my number 1 breakout that I'm kind of planting my flag on, and again, this is one of those guys that maybe it's just a personal thing that I just really root for this guy and I want to see him do well. But Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is going to really step up in his starting quarterback role. We got to see him do a little bit in New Orleans last year since coming back from that horrific injury a few years ago. He's got one of the easiest quarterback schedules going up this next year. He's got a pretty good core of people, really. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, McCaffrey, even Ian Thomas, is someone who is kind of flying on the radar of, those kind of later tight end picks. Just really one thing that impressed me is upside in the Tampa Bay game last year. Had over 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. If that's what he can bring to the table. Granted, Tampa wasn't, the best defense last year, but I think he's really got a great upside, got a really good core of guys to throw to. So if the chemistry's there, I think we see Bridgewater kind of reemerge. And again, if you're playing with, maybe some more casual players, they might not be as inclined to take him as one of the kind of bigger names. So you might be able to get a really good value on him. I personally, in some of my dynasty stuff and that I've just now started doing, just kind of started dabbling in dynasty recently, have been able to get him for a really good price. So I've been really happy with picking him up.
Yeah, and again, he's another team that's playing in one of these divisions where there's going to be a lot of shootouts, right? I mean, the NFC South, where they're going to be going against, the Falcons, the Saints, and the Bucks are all going to be games, and their defense is going to be horrible this year. Obviously Luke Kuechly is retired. They lost Bradbury. So, this defense wasn't very good last year as it is. So they're going to have to throw the ball. They have an offensive-minded, with Joe Brady now there. So there is stuff to like with him. I struggle personally because I am not I love Teddy Bridgewater, the story. I have never been a big Teddy Bridgewater, the football player fan. But I do think, though, with where he is currently going, like he's basically free. If he's not going undrafted, he's going 14th, 15th round, something like that. There's certainly upside there, especially, like I said, because you definitely want to target players who are on offense. They're going to be throwing the ball a ton. I definitely think they're going to be a team that's in the top 10 in pass attempts this year, maybe even top 5. And so those are all things you look for. I question, can he get the ball deep? Because basically what he was last year was mainly a guy who liked to dump it off a lot. He was not willing to throw the deep ball. Now, he was efficient whenever he did it. He was very efficient in his deep ball, but he was like 34th, I think, in deep ball attempts. So those are my issues with him, but I do think the upside's there, and you're already taking all the risk out of it. So if he does not work out, you can always move on. And like I said, I think like you mentioned with the weapons with DJ Moore, absolutely love DJ Moore. I have him as a wide receiver 1, which most people do. And then with Curtis Samuel, Christian McCaffrey catching 100 balls out of the backfield. I think there's a lot to like there with him as well.
Yeah, the thing I like about Teddy this year, 1, the price, he's free, and 2, he's not going to have to do much, right? Like it will be interesting to see how quickly this offense can get on track with all the different pieces they have from the coaching staff on down. But he's not going to have to be so, like he's not actually going to have to be like a good quarterback to give us good fantasy results. Like with the way that offense is set up, 4 wide, that the run after catch ability and everything else. So that's one that's going to be like one of the top offenses I'm going to be looking forward to see, and just see how everything is able to gel.
And Cody, with this, you're number 1. Go ahead and speak to my soul with this one.
That would be Mr. Miles Sanders.
Now, admittedly, did that hit you? Did that hit you in the soul, Kev? Like that is.
Yeah, I felt like we should have put on some Casey and JoJo or something, some Boys to Men, or
little Marvin Gaye,
Michael Bolton, if you will. I don't know.
Hey, whatever. Little known fact: that's the voice that I spoke in for 2 months before my now wife would start talking to me. So that's how I got her the bag. And I started talking like this, and she was just like, "What the fuck happened?" Anyway, Miles Sanders, it almost feels like it's a little bit of low-hanging fruit, but I'm all in on Miles this year. I don't care if they bring anybody in. Get out of here with your Devonta Freeman bullshit. Let someone else believe in that. Let that drive his price down. To me, like, it wasn't going to matter who they brought in anyway. Maybe it's my Penn State blinders, but the dude was really good last year. He was RB15 in half PPR scoring. That was only on 229 touches. And he had a 4-week stretch, I think it was, where he only had 21 total carries. So even if they do bring someone in, like, he's not going to go a 4-week stretch out of injury where he's only going to be receiving 21 carries. They've obviously added some speed during the offseason with Goodwin and our boy Jalen Reagor coming in as well. So that's obviously going to help everybody out in the offense. But honestly, I think it's wheels up for him no matter what. And Kev, you talked about Kenyon Drake having like RB3 overall upside. I think that is Miles Sanders' spot, and he is coming for it.
Hey, I own some Miles Sanders as well, so I love some Miles Sanders. I think people are sleeping on him. It's like the people that want him to fail are not on the side of him, and so they look for anything they possibly can to try to. So they could sign anybody. They could bring Jeremy Hill back off the street, and they'd be like, "See, look who they just signed." It was like the same thing with Damian Williams last year, right? Whenever they brought in LaShawn McCoy, and it was immediately like, "Yep." Or when they draft, or after the draft last year, Darwin Thompson, and everyone was like, "Yeah, guys, wait, the 6th-round pick is going to come in and eat right away. This 5'8", 180-pound running back is all of a sudden going to be the lead back of the Chiefs. You guys just wait." And that's what people look to do. If they're not as high on a player, they will try to find whatever they can to fit their narrative. And that's the same thing with Miles Sanders. And it's ridiculous. There is literally nobody they could bring in right now that would worry me. At this point. So whether it's Devonta Freeman, who is washed, whether it's LaShawn McCoy comes back, who's washed, like, it doesn't matter to me. I actually think if I was going to want anybody out of that backfield other than Miles Sanders, I think taking a shot on Boston Scott late in PPR leagues, I think is actually a pretty smart move as well, because I think he's going to have some PPR upside as well in him. We saw him pretty efficient last year down the stretch as well. So I like Boston Scott a little bit more, as well as kind of a late round flyer. So for me, my number one is, again, I feel like this was kind of low-hanging fruit as well, but I'm going to go all in on Calvin Ridley. I think he is somebody that people should be looking at as a possible wide receiver 1 again this year, heading into his third year with the Atlanta Falcons. We already kind of talked about it, but this team was number 1, they were number 1 last year in pass attempts per game. He played 13 games, missed 3 games with an abdominal strain, 63 receptions on 93 targets for 866 yards and 7 touchdowns. I think there's definitely room for growth. Last year, he finished with 17.7 target share. But this year, Austin Hooper and Mohamed Sanu are both gone. They combined for over 120 targets. There's no real threat at wide receiver 3 with Russell Gage, Christian Blake, or if you have any belief that Laquan Treadwell is all of a sudden going to become a thing. If not, he really has no other target share outside of Hayden Hurst, who they brought in at tight end. But like I said, they were first in the league in pass attempts with 45.9 attempts per game. That's not going to change, even though they spent a heavy draft capital along their defense to try to improve it. But that defense is still going to be pretty bad. They lost some pieces along that, Vic Beasley, and some other pieces there along that defense. So I do not think that this is a team that's going to be able to – they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. And if you look back at a guy like Matt Ryan, do you know how long it's been since Matt Ryan hasn't thrown for 4,000 yards in a season? 2007 was the last time that he hasn't thrown for 4,000 yards in a year. So there's a lot to love with with this entire offense, and I think Calvin Ridley is somebody that I am all about, and I think he's the Chris Godwin of this year, to be honest with you. And I was all about Chris Godwin last year, pounding the table all offseason that Chris Godwin was going too low, and here we are. And so I know somebody today on Twitter was talking about Calvin Ridley and saying, how high would you want to take him because he's turning into the Chris Godwin of last year. And I have no problem taking him even in the second round, to be honest, late second, early third. I have no problem taking him there. I think he pays off that upside. And I like I said, I think Calvin Ridley is somebody that could easily finish, like I said, the top 5 wide receiver.